Hello everyone, myself Advocate Ragini Priyadas, LLM Department, Guwahati University. Today our topic basic structure, doctrine and the rule of law. Now I am going to start this presentation. First of all, I want to give introduction. The doctrine of basic structure is one of the most important principles for all types of constitutional law. Debate on this topic, lying somnolent in the archives of Indian constitutional history during the last decades of 20th century, which has reappeared in public realm and before Supreme Court of India. The Supreme Court of India has decided what can be amended and what cannot. Thus, this concept of basic structure theory arose. Before going to know about definition part, I want to say we have two very important recent cases. Nagaraj versus Union of India 2007, where court held that basic structure are systematic principles underlying connecting provisions of Constitution of India, which give coherence and durability of Constitution and are part of it even if not expressly stated, and said that this basic theory is based on concept of constitutional identity and the object of this theory is continuity. We know our constitution have two most important articles, Article 13 and Article 368, which have some major confusion to implement and which Supreme Court has resolved time to time. Article 13 says any laws inconsistent with or derogation of fundamental rights will be void. Article 368 says before 24th Amendment Act 1971, we read this article as procedure for amendment of Constitution, and after 24th Amendment Act 1971, we read this article as power of the Parliament to amend Constitution and procedure thereof. Now, to understand concept of basic structure theory, I would like to make a structure between some important landmark judgment of Indian history with Amendment Acts, from where basic structure theory concept emerged. This concept is actually judicial concept and its development can be divided into three phases. One is pre-Keshwananda Bharati phase, one is mainly the Keshwananda case, and thirdly post-Keshwananda Bharati case. Under the pre-Keshwananda Bharati case, we have mainly First Amendment Act, Constitution Amendment Act 1951, where this act inserted Article 31A, 31B and 9 Schedule and Article 19(1)(c). Impact of this act was that fundamental rights were affected and legislature reducing individual rights of citizens of Constitution of India. Here court held that Parliament has power to amend any provision of fundamental rights. Article 13 is for ordinary laws and Article 368 for amendment of the constitutional laws. Thus, Article 13 does not applicable over this Act of 1951. Again, this case actually named as Sankara Prasad versus Union of India, which challenged First Amendment Act. Secondly, we came to know about 17th Amendment Act 1974, which says that some provisions like Article 31A and 9 Schedule, and its impact was so bad that 9 Schedule included many provisions which were violating fundamental rights of Indian citizens. Thus, a case named Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan 1964 came, where court held that former Sankara Prasad case is a valid one, and Justice Gajendra Gadkar said fundamental rights can be amended and Parliament has enough power to do changes. But this case were into 5:2 ratio, where 2 judges were not satisfied, and this case was handed over to 11 judges bench of Supreme Court. At that time, Golaknath case came, Golaknath versus State of Punjab in 1967. In this case, judgment was 6:5 ratio and overruled or struck down before or former 2 judgments of Supreme Court, and court held that power of Parliament under Article 368 is not absolute and it is subject to some restrictions. limitations and judicial review, where Article 13 shall be applicable, and court again held that this judgment will be retrospective effect and to all the former Amendment Act. Then we know about Keshwananda Bharti main case, where concept of basic structure was defined by court. This Keshwananda Bharti case arose after the Golaknath case. Means after Golaknath case, Parliament amended the Constitution of India by 24th Amendment Act 1971 and made a few changes by inserting Article 13 Clause 4 and 368 Clause 3 by 24th Amendment Act, where Article 13 Clause 4 says, Article 13 shall not be applicable to any amendments of Constitution of India. Article 368 by Article 368, which affects any provision of the Constitution of India, including fundamental rights. And Article 368 Clause 3, which were added by 24th Amendment Act 24th Amendment Act, which says provision of Article 13 shall not applicable in any act made by Parliament empowered by Article 368. This 24th Amendment Act nullified Golaknath case, former Golaknath case, and again 25th Amendment Act came in 1972, where Article 31C inserted saying that while give effect to DPSP, if Parliament makes any law, it cannot be declared void if it abridges fundamental rights, and court cannot question on the ground that it doesn't give effect to the such policy. Thus, Keshwananda Bharti versus State of Kerala case challenged to check the validity of 24th Amendment Act 25th, 26th, 29th and 9th schedule before Supreme Court of India. In this case, there were 13 judges bench, and Supreme Court adopting a balanced approach for the first time in India. And Parliament, and they said Parliament has power to amend the all provision including fundamental rights, but they cannot destroy basic structure of the Constitution, because Article 368 does not say to change or alter or delete basic structure principle. It only said to amend some provisions. Those principles cannot be deleted by anyone, and these are one basic principle that framers of the Constitution made. Here, Chief Justice Sikri said about some basic features like supremacy of the Constitution, republican democratic form of government, secular character, separation of power, federal character, etc., which qualified basic features. And Justice Sillett and Grover also added Part 4 of Constitution and unity and integrity of the nation. Here, Justice Sikri also said the listed features are not exhaustive and may be listed more elements in near future, and if any question arises regarding basic structure doctrine validity, we must look back into the framers of the Constitution, which intention to make this Constitution was made, and every time we need to be very careful while amending any one of its provision. Then we can say that this is the basic structure concept under Constitution of India. And as per Professor Upendra Bakshi also in 1974, he said that Keshwananda Bharti case was the Indian Constitution of the future. After that, we came to know about post-Keshwananda phases, where we have some judicial pronouncement which enrolled as basic structure. For example, Rajnaran versus State of UP came in 1975, where Allahabad High Court found former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi guilty to electoral malpractices. Parliament enacted then 39 Amendment Act 1975, which government introduced Article 329A and removed Article 71 and announced national emergency in this state. Article 329A, which took away power of Supreme Court to try electoral dispute relating to election of President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Lok Sabha, Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Just before one day of hearing in Supreme Court of the Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case in 1975, our nation pronounced as national emergency situation. In this case, Indira Gandhi case, court held that 39 amendment violating free and fair election and judicial review, and thus this amendment act was struck down. Justice Chandrachud in this case took the opportunity to expand scope of basic structure by identifying some basic features, mainly rule of law, judicial review and democracy, fair and free election announced as basic structure. Court also include rule of law as one of the most important basic feature of the Constitution. Justice Matthew also says, after indicating that rule of law is a part of basic structure apart from democracy concept, he summarized rule of law is an expression to give reality to something which is not readily expressible. That is why Ivory Jennings said that rule of law is a untruly horses. And then we came to know about the 42nd Amendment Act 1976. This is called a mini constitution of Indian history, which have many positive and negative impact. Negative impact was that in this case, actually Parliament enacted some articles which struck down or curtailed Supreme Court's power. And then we came to know about the Minerva Mills case, where actually rule of law concept was made. In the Minerva Mills case in 1980, court held the judicial review in the hands of the constitutional basic structure, and Parliament by amendment process cannot suppress this provision of judicial review. Thus, it is noted that Indira Gandhi case is a most important basic structure concept. Parliament has limited powers to change any provision of Constitution of India, but by using that limited power, Parliament cannot expand own powers, because limited amending powers of Parliament itself is a basic structure concept. And also court held that there is no absolute power in the hands of Parliament. Court also said harmony and balance approach must be maintained between part 3 and 4 of the Constitution. This harmony nature of the Constitution also a basic structure concept. Then we came to know about the Omendra versus Union of India 1981 case, where court held that basic structure doctrine is applicable prospectively, not retrospectively. Any law put in 9th schedule after 24 April 1973 actually shall be under purview of judicial review. So now we know what about judicial review. To give a basic idea what is judicial review, I want to make an example. Like, we are LLM students or law students, where we have 5 years and 3 years course, and in LLM 1 year or 2 years course. For this LLM course, for example, suppose the concept of syllabus of the law is root as well as paramount of this concept course. The authority under which we are studying under an university, the authority has power to shuffle the syllabus based on different semester, but they cannot replace the law papers with papers like other courses, mass comm, MPhil, etc. Means they have right to change or modify some provisions of this paper, but cannot alter or completely change the law system with other courses. This is called basic structure. As an example, I am saying. And during the time of examination, all the students of our semester had to answer same set of questions, and there is same set of procedure for evaluation, that there cannot be inequality or discrimination when one may be required to answer one question and other will be question all of the question, which is a fair play of examination system. And this is a principle of rule of equality, and which is one of the most important second principle of diocese concept. Now in India, for the concept of rule of law, we know that our India's position at 69th out of the 128 countries in the world justice report of 2020, that shows that despite of the fact that we have best constitution of world, the cost of reputation that rule of law runs like a golden thread through the entire fabric of the constitution. This concept means actually rules and principle, and this is a basic values of constitutionalism and most challenging concept of the constitution. Genuine concept of rule of law actually implies equality before law, which is under Article 14. Our constitution says that. As an originator, we know Sir Edward Coke was the first Chief Justice of England at the times of King James I, and first person who criticized maxims of divine concept. And then we know that this concept was developed by Dicey in his book Introduction to the Law of Constitution. And the rule of law concept is the supreme law of our government. And the three main basic principles of rule of law that Dicey says about supremacy of law, equality before law, and predominance of legal spirit. Then under Indian concept, I want to say that if we see World Happiness Report of 2020, India is the making at 144th of the 156 countries survived by the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network. And it may be surprising to know that our immediate neighbor Pakistan is much ahead of us. that question come to know that do you have proper social justice, or if you want to know, right in the preamble it is also said that we the people of India and the world sovereign socialist democratic republic, and to secure all the citizens of justice, which includes all of the three kinds of social, political, economic justice. This socialist concept actually states simply where the state provides security to citizens from cradle to grave. The responsibility of states defined under Article 12 to 36 of Constitution of India to ensure that every one of us are equal footing, we are equal, and this principle of equality before law is one of the very most important features of rule of law by Dicey's second principle. Thus, I want to say that India is a democratic country and its values cannot be restored in this society without rule of law, because for example when democracy requires that political power must be held by representatives elected in free and regularly scheduled elections, rule of law requires that political power must be exercised through generally applicable rules announced in the absence and applied uniformly and impartially. In absence of rule of law, contemporary constitutional democracy would be impossible, as one the idea that a real democracy means a series of civil liberties is required, rule of law becomes essential for democracy. Thus, the Constitution of India contains supreme law in the land, and rule of law dedicates enforcement of those principles above all other laws. Now, if we want to say about the preamble of Constitution of the rule of concept has been welcomed by framers of the Constitution, where preamble assures provides equality of states and opportunity, and to promote among and equality promote among them all, which is Dicey's second principle, which is a golden thread. Again, Article 13 says about any laws which is inconsistent with Constitution of India declared as a void, and is the cardinal principle of judicial review to protect our fundamental right. Then any law tries to curtail our basic features and rights, this article comes to save us. Article 14 also says that Dicey's second principle, and everyone is equal before law and gets equal protection in laws within the territory of India. There should not be any arbitrariness of state actions, and should be absence of any special privilege to any person or class of person. Any action of the government which arbitrary or irrational in nature would be treated as being violative, and Article 14 will become. And again, Article 19 says about right of the citizens that freedom of speech empowers citizens to speak against the use of arbitrary power by the state government. Article 20 again says man may be punished for a breach of law, but he cannot be punished for nothing else. 21 says about no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty except procedure established by law. Now, also it has a wide interpretation which emphasizes right to live with human dignity and free from exploitation. Both the Article 20 and 21 are the very first principle of rule of law. Again, 50 also, Article 50 come under where independence of judiciary system is required. Rule of law also seeks the power of the executive and direct or require them to promote equality before law, but that cannot be possible without the independence of judiciary. And now we have mainly three. We have other also, but mainly three articles which actually exception to the rule of law under Constitution of India. And Article 361 says about the immunity to the President of India and state governments, which they shall not be answerable to any court for exercise of any powers, duties of their office. And again, Article 31C means any act made by the state for implementation of the Article 39 clause B and C cannot be challenged on the ground of right to equality. Article 359 clause 1 says during the proclamation of emergency all the fundamental rights curtailed except Article 20 and 21. And the conclusion part, I want to say that the doctrine of rule of law is a dynamic concept which has been adopted by the democracies across the world. These laws are rooted in the conventions and customs of the country, with evidences interpretation of rule of law as a base concept has been adopted itself with changing time, complexity of human lives and decline in moral value in man, and the concept is very much important to keep the society in order. This concept of the rule of law is a building block in which modern democratic society is founded. Thank you. Thus my presentation is ended here. Thank you so much. Thank you.